Hi, I'm Mash Ponigala, brand strategist at Spellbrand. Now, this is a question that a lot of people don't really think about. Is your industry unattractive? Now, when I say unattractive, I don't really mean unattractive in aesthetics or interesting, not that way. An unattractive industry is one where the profit potential is less, right? So the profit margins are less, the revenue might be a lot, but the profit margin might be really less. At the end of the day, a lot of business owners look at their industry, look at their business, and the metrics are usually revenue, right? Sales and revenue. Now, that is okay. That is a good kind of a metric to strive for, to use as a benchmark, or to gauge the progress of your business or your brand. But the most important thing for a business is profit, not revenue. Of course, to have a high profit, you also need a lot of revenue. But at the same time, you could be having a lot of revenue with a very small profit margin, which means at the end of the day, your profit is low. And once your profit is low, you don't have enough money to invest back into the business. And it is those businesses and brands that don't reinvest in themselves that end up, of course, fighting in the red ocean and slowly, or sometimes quickly, being devoured by the competition, right? Devoured by the other sharks. So let's take a quick look at what factors make for an unattractive industry. And then you take a deep, hard look at your own industry and try and identify if it's an attractive industry, an unattractive industry, or something in between. All right? So if you look at this, now Porter actually came up with this 5 forces of competition kind of framework. And according to that, an unattractive industry has the following characteristics, which make the industry have less profit potential. Number 1, the threat of new entrants is high. Then the bargaining power of the suppliers is strong, right? Okay, so what does it really mean? It means that to enter that industry, it's really easy, or rather the barriers for entering into that industry is easy. For example, online sales, right? Online courses, let's say. It's very easy for anyone with a little bit of knowledge, a good camera, and some time to put together an online course and then simply either launch it on their website or to submit it to places like Teachable, Udemy, the online kind of course marketplaces. However, let's say we're talking about the rare wine market segment, right? Now, rare wine market segment is not easy to get in. The barriers are high. First of all, you need specialized industry knowledge. So you need to know about grapes, about growing vines and making wine, the different regions, the different kind of producers, so on and so forth. So you need a lot of specialized knowledge. And then after that, you need a little bit of capital, because rare wines, fine wines, they're quite expensive. And if you want to do a business, then you need to be able to invest in that. On top of that, you need licenses, right? License to sell alcohol online, or a license to hold auctions. Or if you approach auction houses like Christie's, you need to have the collateral, you need to have the credibility, you need to have a lot of things before you're a player in that sector. So that is something that determines whether your industry is unattractive, right? Now, I know what you might be thinking. If your market segment is easy to enter, then it should be called an attractive market, right? Yes, maybe. Attractive to new entrants, not for you, if you're already in business there. If you're someone who is watching this video and is trying to get into a market, then look at it look at this list and also what I'm about to explain with the rest of the video from that angle, from the angle of saying an unattractive market segment, whatever I'm telling you, is an attractive one for you if you're trying to get into the market. That means you need to find markets where the threshold of entry is less, right? It's easier, or so on and so forth. Okay, bargaining power of suppliers is strong, right? If the suppliers, if the number of suppliers is sort of low, then the bargaining power that they have might be high, right? So maybe you will have to pay more to get your raw materials, whatever. The bargaining power of buyers is strong. Now, why would the bargaining power of buyers be strong? It's because there's lots and lots of competitors in that market. So buyers, customers have a lot of choice, and there's also this the potential for substitutes. There's a potential for people switching brands. Brand loyalty might be quite low. The threat of substitute products is high. So again, if there are lots and lots of competitors, that means for any given single product or service, there's lots and lots of people, lots and lots of brands, providing their versions of the product. And these could, then of course, you get down into price wars, right? Then price becomes the factor. And if you're trying to compete in that kind of a red ocean, then if you cannot be the benchmark industry leader, and you cannot catch up with them by producing the new kind of models or whatever that they are coming up with, then all you have left with is price differentiation. And price differentiation is the worst thing. You should never, ever compete on price. Now I hear you asking, Mash, what about all those companies out there thriving on price differentiation? Okay, thriving. What does thriving mean? If you go to a seller on eBay and you see a commodity being sold and let's say it's a $5 gadget, and there's 1,000 different people selling the same product, and each of them has a variation of price, and there's one that's selling the same product for $3 and they've sold 1,000, right? And you see the ratings and you think, wow, this guy's doing well. Maybe in terms of the numbers, but what about profit? So if the market sustainability, or if the market can bear the weight of, let's say, $5, if $5 is the market price for that, and this guy is selling it at $3 just because he wants to beat the competition and get more customers, he's already sacrificing $2, right? So if his purchase price is $2, then he's making a profit of $1. And even if he's having 1,000 sales, a profit of $1 is not really much compared to someone who probably has 500 sales but is selling at $5 because they already have $2 advantage. But anyway, so that's why the threat of substitute products is high. Finally, the intensity of rivalry among industry competitors is high. Complementary products or services are unavailable. So again, if there's a lot of competition in that market segment, then it is unattractive. There's no other way of saying it. Traditional marketing psychology and all that might might say or might have this philosophy that the more competition the better, because then that means that market is healthy and it has a huge consumer base and it will sustain, and you will get your share of the pie. But what kind of a share is that, right? Is that like a sliver? Is it a 1% share of 100%? Well, a 1% share of $1 billion industry, yes, that's a lot of money. But what's happening with that 1%? How many people are competing for that 1% share? There is, it's something that you really need to seriously think about. So these are the things that determine what an unattractive industry is. And so when you're looking at your own industry, you need to check out these benchmarks and then compare it and say, is my industry healthy, right? Or unattractive, sorry. If your industry is unattractive, there are 2 or 3 different things you can do. And by the way, we will get into the 5 forces, Porter's 5 forces in detail in just a second. And I will talk a little bit more and maybe even give a couple of examples. But before that, what do you do when you realize that your industry is unattractive, right? Do you just shut shop and, move on to a different market segment? Maybe, but might be difficult, right? Because maybe you're already established. You've been doing this business for quite a while and you may be struggling, but you still have a lot of customers, and on the face of it, you think, yeah, this is the way it is. I'm doing a lot of business. I'm making, in terms of revenue, $500,000 a year. Of course, the profit is only about 70,000, but maybe that is it. Yeah, 70,000 is not bad. Of course, it's not bad, right? I mean, it's all relative. So I'm not saying that you should always be in an industry where, your profit is $500,000. That's not what I'm saying. But not only is the profit margin less, but there's also a lot of other things that you would be doing and facing that you probably don't think because you never question it and you take it for granted, right? And this might be, for example, the tax of competing in a red ocean, right? You are competing with so many different competitors that your creativity, your energy, your resources, your passion, everything is channeled towards doing one better than the competition, rather than growing and developing your business, making sure that you're always providing value to your customers or improving your product or service, looking at innovation, right? Doing something for the world. There's lots of things that you could be doing, but instead you're focusing all your attention on doing one better than the competition. So what can you do then? Well, you could try and create your own blue ocean. What that means is you could still be in that market segment, but you move away from the competition, you move away from the red ocean, and you create your own blue ocean. And you do that by differentiating, not based on price or benchmarking what the others are doing, but rather questioning the status quo, right? Questioning industry assumptions. And I'll do a separate video on that actually. And also by looking at non-customers. And I did a video recently on that, and I'll link to it in this description of this video. Check it out. It's an awesome concept and one that a lot of people don't think about. Go after non-customers. Identify the common pain points of non-customers, the 3 tiers of non-customers, and you'll be surprised. You don't have to then fight for the core customer base where there's lots of sharks attacking that. But you could go away and find non-customers. Okay, let's now look at Porter's 5 forces in a little bit more detail so you get a bit more understanding of what this unattractive industry looks like. All right, here is a graphic of Porter's 5 forces analysis, right? So at the center of that graphic is competitive rivalry. And then you have threat of new entrants, bargaining power of suppliers, threat of substitutes, and the bargaining power of buyers. If you look at the threat of new entrants, then the factors that influence this threat of new entrants is low entry barriers, as I was describing before. Low R&D expense, that means people can quickly do research or they can come up with maybe a quick innovation because it's easier, it's cheaper. Not much specialized knowledge required, just as I was talking about, for example, the rare wine market segment, as opposed to, I don't know, writing blog posts online or something like that, right? And then, of course, lower costs. Lower costs is about investment. Lower costs is about costs of running the business, setting it up. Maybe you don't need warehouses. All you need is a website, so on. Then you have the bargaining power of suppliers. To determine the bargaining power of suppliers in your industry, if you want to know if your suppliers have a strong bargaining power, which means it's bad for you, right? You're lower, it's affecting your profit margin and making your life harder, is the number and size of suppliers, the uniqueness of suppliers' product, focal companies' ability to substitute. So these are the things that you need to look at. Look at them, look at the suppliers and check out their sizes. Then you have 3 threat of substitutes. Now, to determine if substitutes are a threat to your market segment, then look at the following kind of criteria. The number of substitutes available, buyer propensity to substitute. Now, what does that mean? In certain market segments, buyers have a higher propensity to go after substitutes. That means they easily can try substitutes. In certain market segments, not so. For example, the automotive sector, right? For the automotive sector, the target audience or the customers that are in the top kind of elite customer base that always buy luxury cars, they don't easily go and buy a cheap substitute. If they're buying Mercedes or BMW, they don't just go and buy a Nissan kind of a 2-door car, unless of course there's a reversal of fortunes and they don't have the money. But so it's not easy. But in certain other kind of markets, for example, beverages, beers, people try different beers. They switch and they move around. There's no big deal. Yes, of course, there's always a hardcore, loyal group of fans, but every market, every product, every service has a hardcore group of loyalists, right? So you got to look at that, the buyer propensity. Are your buyers easy to go after substitutes? Relative price performance. So what's happening with the value? So if you draw a graph and see the price on the x-axis and then the performance, how does it go in your market, especially with the substitutes? Are they offering similar quality to your mainstream products but at a lower price? You got to check that out too. And of course, switching costs. How easy is it to switch? Now, to switch from Guinness to, I don't know, Strongbow or whatever beer, Heineken, very easy, right? I'm at the bar, instead of ordering Heineken, I can just go for Bud. Easy. What about switching cars? Expensive, right? Switching homes, even more, like that. So switching costs is very important. All right, the next one is bargaining power of buyers. This depends, again, on the number of customers. So how big is the market segment, right? How big is the customer base? And the size of each order. So if your size of each order is big, right, and the ticket price is high, then of course the bargaining power of buyers is more. If it's a few bucks, then really not, because they cannot hold anything on your brand, business. And if they say, you know what, unless you give me a huge discount, I'm not going to buy your product, you'd be like, okay, fine, just move on, because it's what, a $5 product, 10, 20, 30, right? But if it's a $899 for your product, then you want to have that customer. You don't want to brush them off. So the buyer has more power there. Difference between competitors. Again, what kind of differences determine the competitors in your market segment? Check that out. Is your product or service a commodity? If it is, then the only differentiator is price. Then of course, buyers have the power because they can move from you to another one just because it's a few bucks cheaper. So, you got to offer that, and you will say, okay, I'll match that price, or I will reduce the price, right? So you're losing power there. And price sensitivity, again, elasticity, price sensitivity. And then that leads us to competitive rivalry. Now, competitive rivalry is the core of the red ocean. It's what kind of competitors, right? Number of competitors, diversity of competitors. When I say diversity, imagine a market segment, let's say, I don't know, sandwiches, right? If you're a shop selling sandwiches, then your direct competitor might be another one like a cafeteria, right? Or a coffee shop, or Pret-a-Manger, or 7-Eleven, something like that. It could also be supermarkets. It could be delivery services. It could be kiosks on the street. You see, there's a big diversity in terms of the kind of competitors. What about car makers? Well, the competitors are homogeneous, mostly. They're all the same, right? They have to have big plants, they're huge companies, and they have hundreds of thousands of employees. And there, the diversity is less. So, the diversity of competitors is very important, because the more diverse the competitors, the more unattractive your market segment. Why? Because you don't know from where somebody might come in and take a huge share of the market because they've come up with something new. Because you might be thinking, well, the coffee shop across the street, you know what, the best they can do is offer some price discounts, right? Maybe they will have free Wi-Fi. I can match that. They sell their sandwiches with a smile. I can match that. Or they make great sandwiches. Well, I can improve my sandwiches. But imagine someone just coming in like a supermarket or a delivery service or a kiosk, and they just change the rules of the game, right? So diversity, there's danger in that. Industry growth. Is this a growing industry? Is it a plateaued industry? Is it a declining industry? Very important. Make a note of that. Why? Because if it's a plateaued or declining industry, then it's very unattractive, because it means that it's ripe for disruption, right? Again, it hits your profit margins, and there's risk and danger there. Quality differences, again. And brand loyalty. You know, what kind of loyalty do customers have towards brands, right? That also determines. So these are the 5 factors, Porter's 5 forces. Analyze your industry based on this. Listen, this is not some theory, MBA theory. No, this is a powerful tool for you to start thinking creatively about your business, about your brand, right? This is not something that only academics do, or MBA students, or big corporations. Not at all. Even if you're a single person business, mom and pop kind of business, right? A solopreneur, this is critical. More so critical, because you want to be aware of the realities of your market. You cannot be in a delusion, or you cannot be in a state of blissful ignorance, thinking, well, this is the way it is. I'm glad to get the sales that I'm getting. Yes, it's good to be grateful to get what you can, but you should always be also thinking about creatively, creating a blue ocean. And a part of that is this. All right. And if you're in this process, then I will leave a link below in the description. You can schedule a video call with me, a 1-hour video call, and we can talk about your industry, right? I will analyze it, and I will then use these 5 different factors and give you a kind of a detailed report, and also advise you on what you could do, what kind of paths you can go down so you can go towards the blue ocean, and so on. Otherwise, if you're just curious, you have some questions, just leave them below and I will try to answer them. All right. So till my next video, take care.